I was going to just talk to you a little bit about chapters 11 and 12. I just have a few comments that I wanted to make, but those chapters were on looking at challenging behavior and communication. I'm looking over at the text if you know what I'm looking at. But some things that I wanted to comment on, um, well, they kind of go together in a lot of ways because I might have mentioned to you previously, but if I haven't, I'll say it now that the strongest correlation that we know between behavioral problems and not is feeling heard or being able to communicate. And so, in many ways, communication and how we establish communication with people with serious disabilities has a lot to do with what behavioral outcomes are going to be. So you might want to think about it. Not, I mean, I know that you all like kids and you want them to communicate and that kind of thing, but you also doing yourself a favor because generally, when you get communication skills developed at a higher level where a person is able to make their needs known and those sorts of things, what you'll find out is that behavior tends to go down. Even if it doesn't stop, even the intensity may decrease. So you generally going to see some kind of a payoff. So, anyway, about communication, one of the things that I always say about working with kids who have severe disabilities is that the best thing that you can work on is cause and effect. And I know that sounds sort of simplistic, but so many people with disabilities have been acted on, or because of their behavioral schemes or their inability to communicate, they've been misunderstood. And so people have come in and done what they thought they should do, what would be the right thing to do. And what happens is that people with disabilities start feeling acted upon and sort of, what's the word, at the mercy of the environment around them. And so, one of the things that we want to get cleared up right away is that you can make a difference in your environment. Okay, the cause and effect. I can push this button that makes this noise, and this woman appears with my snack. So I know now when I do this thing, something will occur for me, and that's the beginning. It's the beginning of moving out of self and into other. And so I spend so much time working with those principles, communication principles around cause and effect when I worked with kids with disabilities back when I was teaching, and now with the high school that I go to each week. For the university, those kids are pretty seriously disabled themselves, and I'm always saying to the people there, get in their eyes, make sure you get eye contact, make sure they look at you every time you talk to them. When they say their name, when you say their name, make sure they look at you. Extend the time. I know I look a little weird. I'm doing this, but this is what I do a lot of times. Make your eyes come to their eyes, and see if you can extend this gaze for a longer period of time, because oftentimes that is something that is difficult to do. But in our communication sequences, almost always, it involves eye contact, right? Even like this, where I'm talking to you via a camera. We still rely on eye contact to communicate a lot, including interest and also awareness and understanding, like you heard what I said, or you were listening, etc. So I'm always a big believer in that. If you can make everything, work it into your room, work it into every activity, work it into things so that when the cueing comes, either it's the teacher coming toward a desk and a student looks up, or it's hearing their name. But whatever those cues are that you put into the environment, those natural cues, make sure that you build them in and use them regularly in all of your schemes so that you keep building that skill set. It's really very, very important. Another thing that the book talks about that, or the text I should say talks about, that I think is important, is using things like time delay, sabotage, putting things out of reach. I've used well, actually, I've used all these, but I was just thinking about, I used to use inadequate portions a lot, where, a kid would want, we'd be giving something out and I'd put like a little bitty dot of pudding or something on a little whatever, and the kid would look at it and I would look at the kid, right? You don't do it in a mean way. Like I'd say, what? What's going on? Getting somebody to go, like, that this isn't right, Then you build from that. So it might be that I get the kid, if he's verbal, of course, I might say yes, no, something. But if not, I might say, you better hit my hand if you want some more pudding or something like that. Okay? It's in every scheme that you build like that that you're able to really start making kids get out of a comfort zone, and force themselves to find a way to make their communication work. And I've done that many, many times. Again, I don't. Some of it sounds a little mean. You don't like putting it out of reach. I've used out of reach. I always have a big smiley face on when I use it. Okay, so it's not like it's over here. You're gonna come get it. I don't do that. I'm always make it pleasant, but frustrating. It's got to be frustrating. All right. So I mean, if I could put it in one sentence, I might say working in this environment or with this type of population, making them work for it is a big goal. Make them work for it. It's a big goal. Okay? Now, people with severe disabilities come with lots of needs, and whether it be mobility or physical issues or whatever. So when I say make them work for it, I do think it's important that we pay close attention to their comfort, to their physical capacity, to do things, etc. I'm saying that meaning that make them work for it at the level they can work for it. That's what I'm trying to say. Because sometimes people get into really going after a skill and they don't realize that they're they're actually frustrating the person in the wrong way. Um, I guess I would call it like healthy frustration. I don't know if that's a way to put it, but meaning that I'm feeling this sense of, I really want something, and so I'm going to act upon it so I can make something happen. Not frustration like I'm literally hurting, or I'm going to start crying or whatever, right? So I'm just going over that because all of a sudden I thought if anybody watched this out of context, it would sound maybe a little cruel, and that's not how you would do it. So, and also one other thing is two other things actually. There's some nice material on stimulus response prompting that you should look at about interrupting, about using the most restrictive for oh shoot prompt. I couldn't even think of the name of it. The highest level prompt, the physical, holding the hand, moving a prompt, versus giving a verbal prompt without any assistance physically. That those are some really nice examples that will help you think through how you might use the techniques that I'm describing to really enhance the communication style of the child, or student, maybe older. What I mean by style, I don't mean. Let me think how to characterize what I just said. Meaning that the way that those prompts are set up, you're sort of shaking it up a little bit, and hopefully you're elaborating the person's style. There maybe I should say their capacity, their range, making the range go a little further. Okay, so anyway, that's really I thought a fantastic set of examples, and also making sure that you do preference assessments to see what a person likes in the room, where they like to be in the room, who they like to be by in the room. Um, I think that's one of the things that when you're looking and watching people who possibly don't communicate so well, um, we have to pay real close attention to the things that they pay attention to. Like there's a guy that I was watching one day, then this one student really likes him, and every time he walks in the room, she looks over at him and smiles, and I'm like, preference. So, meaning that it's not that she can work with him maybe all the time or something like that, but it's that this can be like a high interest person that when she gets, work, and then when you get your free time, you'll read a book with Mr. Kevin, I think his name was. So you get the idea, I think. And also ecological assessments. To me, it's like whether you do formal assessments or not, I don't care. It's that you have the mindset, especially when it comes to like the ecological assessment, just have the mindset that every time you're looking around an environment where you're teaching students and say, like, in a sense, what are the opportunities in this environment? What are the things in this environment that I'm not paying attention to? Okay, because a lot of times there are social interactions that can occur with students, or there might be some kind of a task that a student could take on. There's all sorts of things that happen if you just look around and see what's happening. And I think that really good teachers, I've been working with some for the last couple of years, they are constantly scouring the environment for things that their students can be doing. They've started a coffee business. They're doing more interacting at lunchtime now. They're doing some stuff with some office things. But anyway, it all got kind of thought up because they were trying to figure out where in the environment existed things that would help not only their students grow and learn and all of that, but increase their time in a general ed population. So anyway, it's a really good thing to do. And then a few comments about behavior. Um, One thing that I just cannot go over or emphasize enough is defining behavior very, very clearly, clearly define behavior. Because when behavior becomes combative and possibly dangerous, and sometimes it gets easy sometimes for people to, start writing things like he was hitting all the kids or something. Okay, maybe that was happening, but give me a little something else, right? Here's what I mean. That like threat like began flailing arms when something was said, chair fell over, student was hit, right? Because sometimes hitting versus like somebody getting hit are two different things. Okay, I know that this is probably not the best example. So you're thinking that was kind of a dumb example, but I have read things where the way I read it, I would have thought the kid got up, walked over, and started punching kids out, and that's not what was happening. So be very careful how you state what happens. State it behaviorally, and also, it's very important to always be paying attention to what is the manifestation of what. Like, where does this come from? Okay? Now, here's what I mean by that. Um, for example, if we know a kid has a real sensory problem, and we go to a big event in the gymnasium and it's really, really loud, it's pretty clear, most likely, that that's why this person is having some kind of a breakdown, right? So it's not bad behavior, it's the person's having a breakdown because, in terms of sensory stuff, they really are not able to handle that very well, okay? It's important, though, to also look at things developmentally and where people are. All right. So because we have people, I was thinking the other day we took the students from this high school to a concert, and it was kind of boring. I mean, it was fine. It was nice, but it was kind of nothing really exciting. And we have students whose attention spans are like 5, 7 minutes, and so like 28 minutes later, we're wondering like why they're bored or why they're getting anxious or whatever. Well, at that point, you really can't look at them like they're 18 because they really aren't like 18-year-olds. We are looking at kids who are operating like at 5 and 6. So one kid didn't get an answer to. He raised his hand and they didn't call on him, and he got upset. And there were all these things that were happening that could indicate bad behavior, but really what it indicated was developmental level, cognitive level, sensory stuff. Oh yeah, I forgot we had one guy too who jumped up and did a lot of stemming during this concert. A lot of things going on. Anyway, the school's great. They're all very familiar with it and used to it. But My point is that when behavior occurs that causes problems, either people get upset or possibly someone could be injured, those sorts of things. I think it's incredibly important that you talk about the manifestation of the behavior. You need to really talk about that because it's not like this kid got up in the morning and went, "Hey, I'm going to, go and duke out a third grader." That's not what happened. And so often, behavior that I witness that's bad behavior that I witness with people with serious disabilities oftentimes is not intended to be harmful to somebody else. It's really about self protection, self preservation, losing control, getting really overly reactive, like their sensory system's gone crazy, whatever. It seems like it's almost always has been in my experience that that's really what happens. But it doesn't always come out that way to everybody else. So the way that we describe these things, in my mind, does two things. One is when we have an accurate description of something, we generally are going to respond more accurately to the problem. Like, so if it's a sensory issue and you remove them from something, or you give them quiet space or something like that, or like the guy who's up and stimming, it's like at the concert thing, you move him around to something else where he can do it in a place that's not bothersome to somebody else. You tend to kind of know where it's coming from, and so you respond to that accordingly. It's also, I think, very important. In fact, I know very important too that if there are issues that come up, let's just say a kid gets hit or something and there's a big concern, being able to look at the manifestation of behavior in that situation is vitally important, because what we don't want to do is we don't want to ever get our students mixed up in a traditional um, discipline system when they don't have the skills or the maturity or the developmental ability. You can throw in a lot more things to meet those levels of expectations. So, and I just seen it happen in schools enough times, or things like that, that I just encourage you to think about it, and say, let's get down to the basic of what this is, so we can talk about that. Um, there was a few lists that were good in the chapter that I was reading that I liked, and one of those that I really thought was good was setting rules very explicitly. So so students are very aware of what they can do, what they can't do, when they can do it, when they can't do it, and that can be not just something that's just like written on the wall. I'm thinking of an example of a young woman who they worked with her for a long time. She was like addicted to this encyclopedia something. She really wanted it. She was on the spectrum, and it was like an obsession. And they got it. So I can't remember how they did it now. Oh well, I know. They put things here. They walked her over. They did this whole procedure with her. She was getting really anxious. They sort of desensitized her or whatever. She's now learned that when the book is in a certain place, she can't have it, and when it's in a certain place, she can't have it. And a lot of times they will move the book when she's not looking and then get her attention, and then she'll look over and she's so excited. She's now letting that, she's letting the environment um, manage what was really becoming like big time OCD behavior. I mean, like she had to have the book all the time. No matter what they were working on, she wanted to be thumbing through this book. So anyway, when I say rules explicitly, I don't mean just make sure that you have the rules written down or whatever, but that you really teach students how to follow the rules, what the rules mean. And that's one of the reasons that when you're getting involved in looking at any kind of behavioral planning, having rhythms and routines like the daily patterns of your classroom set up, that's going to really, really help with a population like this. Some kids kind of like a little bit of, um, you know, disruption from time to time, but I've found that most of the kids I've worked with in this area, they really pretty much like it the same every day, if at all possible. Okay, the last thing I wanted to say that is that if you are looking at the behavioral issues in your class with others, don't be afraid of hypothesis developments. Okay, don't be afraid to sit and go, I wonder if it's this, I wonder if it's that, I wonder if it's this, I wonder if it's that. The only way that you're going to be able to teach good replacement skills for students um, that need those is you're going to have to really know exactly, what it is that you're addressing, right? Like, what, where is he getting this sensory feed? Is it from that toy? Is it from these lights? Is it from these people? So you really have to, through creating hypotheses, you start deciding and determining whether that's going to be something that, I mean, whether you can find what it is that you're looking for in terms of the appropriate replacement skill. Okay? It's really hard to do sometimes because we get caught up in our day and everything else. But it's really pretty simple to be able to take some basic, very basic data, just tally marks over, like, set a time period, say for 1 week, during math time. Um, she's going to get these blocks to work with, and she will stay focused on the blocks for this amount of time. Or let's say she's been throwing the blocks. How many times did she throw the blocks? Get a date, get a baseline. Take 5 days of that. And then when you find out how many times, then start your intervention and see what's going to happen. It's that easy, I think, for me, because what I found was it was so important in a classroom, like these classrooms, that everything was so individualized, and that just made it easier for me to be able to just sit and just kind of go, okay, we're going in the right place, or going in the right place. But I really hate it when I get around teachers and they start throwing out, what's wrong with the kid. And I was like, there's no hypothesis development. There could be a lot of things we always forget. And it's one of the things about developing hypotheses that I love, which is really, you're saying we don't really know, but we think we might have an idea. So what do we think is an idea? Literally put that out with your team and then work on it and see what you can find. Um, okay, so I think that's about it for those two chapters. I will get back to you about the next ones soon, and let's see if I had any other. Oh, I know what I said. I said to myself, I'm sorry. I said I finally figured out that when I was working with kids with uh, severe disabilities, the big kids, that when I thought about them like toddlers, it made a lot more sense. Because if you think about toddlers, they really aren't bad people. They're just trying to do things their way, right? And they're like going to be, by gosh, I'm going to do it my way. And also, they're not bad people, but they just don't communicate so well sometimes. Do you know what I mean? And so they just scream or do something. I thought that I was like, oh my god, it's kind of like that kind of work. And when you think of it that way, I'm not saying it to diminish these students, but when you think about it that way, I was like, it really says a lot about your communication skill use and how you would develop that and how they would understand discipline. And that's what made me think about it is, if you look at kids at a toddler age, their moral reasoning is, I want it, so I should have it. And so that kind of idea comes out a lot in the work that we do in the behavioral and communication area. So, okay, I will see you on the next video soon. Take care.